So I've reached a comfortable 24 hours within Persona 3 Reload, and before I disappear off the face of the planet for 2 weeks while I play this game, like a basement-dwelling gremlin, I figured I should give my opinions on Reload. My last video was a look at pre-release reviews and how lazy game journos have become, but everyone knows that game journos are bad at their job. So what are my opinions as an unpaid, unbiased, always correct girl boss? What do I think of Reload? Fuck, it's hard to start one of these sentences without a Matt Pat well, but fuck it. Well, the combat is fun as balls. One problem that I have with modern combat within Atlas games is that it's either piss easy or goes for bullshit difficulty. Reload is the opposite of that. I have to preface this with, I am playing the game on the day one patch with the hardest difficulty, which is Merciless, as of right now, and as someone with experience with the franchise as a whole and have dabbled with some SMT games, I think that the game is balanced. Don't get me wrong, I've been a bit cocky at times and have had my ass handed to me. I will admit, I play these games in the dumbest ways possible. In my first playthrough of Persona 4, I was so enticed by Black Frost, that's it. So, I grinded within the first dungeon of Persona 4 Golden at 30 FPS on my PlayStation Vita for 50 hours because I found early combat that fun within the game. And so I, in my infinite wisdom, and with the help of the reshuffled shuffle time mechanics, have explored Tartarus from bottom to top 4 or 5 times. Only leaving Tartarus once I've run out of crappy healing items and I'm drained of every bit of that SP bar. Well, couldn't I have continued going with Twilight Fragments? Although, yes, I think it would be very much so possible to grind to level 99 within the first block of Tartarus by abusing Twilight Fragments and the healing cards within Shuffle Time, but why on earth would you do that, you clown? Don't waste your fucking Twilight Fragments. You need that shit for Twilight Fragment chests in Tartarus. Speaking of exploration of Tartarus, I'm a big advocate for randomly generating dungeons within JRPGs. Due to the dungeon exploration and repeated playthroughs consistently maintaining freshness with a more heavy focus on combat rather than puzzle solving that is only a puzzle once, and then becomes boring to go through on a second or third playthrough. This is how I feel about P5's dungeons. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that there is regular dungeon crawling and combat within Mementos, however, due to how early you get the insta-kill skill, Mementos gameplay becomes like how a 6-year-old plays their first Grand Theft Auto game. Running over pedestrians. You see, the metaphor only works if you see shadows as the pedestrians that the 6-year-old runs over. Joke aside, what I'm saying is that you run them over and that there is no combat or incentive to fight shadows because Mementos is just an ends to a means. Persona 3 and Persona 5 are similar in that way. Think of it like this. Persona 3 has Tartarus, which is just Mementos, but you're going up instead of down. Makes sense, right? You also need to explore it in its entirety to fight the final boss. Both are very similar, right? Okay, cool. So now imagine that the full moon bosses, you can explore their dungeon any day rather than the one day you get to do them, and instead of them being very linear boss fights, it's a full-size dungeon full of puzzles, and then boom, I just made Persona 3 Persona 5. So now imagine that you had a way to insta-kill any shadow you fight in Tartarus, which is the bulk of the training a player has to fight different types of shadows. Some not having any weaknesses and the player has to adapt and find ways to fight these complex foes. Like, for example, I fought a boss in the second block of Tartarus that has no weaknesses and would rotate hitting my party members' weaknesses. So I had to guard with certain party members to find out what ailment the boss was weak to, as it had no weaknesses. After I discovered that it could be critted after being put under despair, I felt a huge sense of reward as I easily dispatched the boss. Encounters like that aren't common within Persona 5, and so I can honestly say with a lot of certainty, I think that a lot of new fans to the series will come to enjoy Reload a lot more than Persona 5. Due to its more engaging, non-stop combat-focused gameplay rather than puzzle solving and stopping after doing pretty much anything to talk about the thing we just did. I know Persona 4 isn't innocent of talking about shit you just did, like you're a 10-year-old with a lack of object permanence, but at least those talking investigation periods aren't mid-dungeon crawling. You can skip them and they aren't much of a hurdle when it comes to enjoyment like a game like Persona 5, where it sends you to a full stop or forces you to leave the dungeon due to the game's linearity. I find it funny that a game that is so prideful on how much free will you get to explore and do things is by far, in my opinion, the most linear on-rails experience when you boil it down to its core mechanics. I'm glad that Reload or P4 doesn't force you to leave a dungeon due to a boss fight. Sure, I get that there's stakes and in-game context reasons to why you have to leave and come back to fight the final boss. But there's something to be said when I find so much enjoyment from the risk-reward gameplay games like P4 and Reload have to offer when they allow you to fight bosses with little to no health or SP. And you can risk having your shit handed to you on a silver platter by a butler that is the cold, harsh reality of your own skill issue. But I must not be the only one that tempts fate by going into the unknown with very little resources and throwing all my game knowledge at a boss, and using my own skill as a player and utilizing high-risk, high-reward strategies. Like, for example, using healing items that may give me an ailment to heal me, or low-accuracy moves to progress forward. This element of gameplay is absent from P5, so having it back and elaborated on even further makes me so happy. So, speaking of gameplay elements that were implemented to Persona 3 Reload, how about that baton passing, huh? Now renamed to shifting. What do you guys think? Personally, as mentioned in my last video, I fucking feared that this would break the gameplay. However, from what I can see, there aren't any buffs or free attacks. It is what it says on the tin, you just pass your turn on to another party member without any other benefit, and holy shit, this is so fun and balanced. It's a genuine shock to me that all it took to fix this mechanic was to not give your allies free HP, SP attack boost, a pat on the back, and a weekend trip to the Bahamas. And that's just to say that this shit feels fun, fresh, and balanced. I keep using the word balanced, and I think it's important to say that Persona 3 FES on the PlayStation 2, Persona 3 Portable on the PlayStation Portable, and Persona 3 Reload on modern consoles, although have the same flesh and blood, are different cuts of the same crop. FES is balanced around its archaic one-more system and tactics system. By allowing the player character to have multiple weapon types, allows your player to be the Swiss Army knife of the party. Don't feel like you can trust stupid cunt Yukari to heal you? Fucking do it yourself, bitch. Don't feel like you can trust stupid bitch Yukari to shoot her bow at an enemy that has a pierce weakness? Guess what? Fucking do it yourself, bitch. Don't feel like trusting stupid shithead Yukari to use Garu? Don't fucking make me repeat myself. I think you get my point. A few years later, Portable was a response from Atlas to the many bitch boys crying, "Wah, I can't figure out the tactics menu, press it too hard, wah wah wah." Well, they cooked up a little something called Persona 3, but with party member control, rebalanced gameplay without multiple weapon types, because we can't have the protagonist being too powerful, or the game will be too easy. You pick. Oh, and they also did the FemC, but she has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. So, how did party member control being introduced to Persona 3 Portable change the balance? Firstly, they changed it so the protagonist cannot become the Swiss Army knife that they were within FES. Now you can be Mitsuru and miss with Mara and Karin. Isn't that fun? Jokes aside, Portable did balance the game in ways to adjust for party member control, like changing weaknesses and adding changes that were seen within the Persona 4 combat system. For example, it no longer takes a turn for your party members to get up. So now, with Reload, they took the experience they had of rebalancing the game to have party member control in Portable, and they took the developments that they've made making SMT, Persona, and Soul Hackers into Reload, and taking quality of life changes from games like Persona 4 and Persona 5. I could go on, but this section's taking up a little bit too much space. My closing notes on combat is that I hope and pray to God that you don't unlock baton pass bonuses like in P5R, because if you do, they better have made the enemies harder to compensate. Finally, onto a new section. So once a player leaves Tartarus, it's social linking time. So what do I think about the social links? I think that them being voiced is nice and charming. Personally, I'm a player that can read, so sometimes I end up skipping the voiced lines as they don't speak as fast as I read, but that's a me thing, regardless. I really enjoy the social links up to offer. I think alongside many other fans, there are some social links that were in Portable that we would have wanted more, like Shinji over Gourmet King, Sayori over the Teacher, Ryo over Kaz. Having the option would have been nice, but honestly expecting any actual FemC content in this game is foolish, as they've confirmed that FemC stuff was never going to be in the game. Sigh. So what do I think about these episode thingies and studying with your comrades? I think it's charming. I think Akihiko was a little bit too flirtatious to Makoto in his episode, as if Makoto is his little Discord kitten and he wouldn't allow any harm to be done to. Like, I get Makoto has the femboy androgyny thing going, but I don't know if he swings that way. Anyway, side tangent over, I like them so far. It's cute, endearing, and funny. It's all what I expected, really. I think you can't go far talking about the social links without discussing the new voice cast, so I'll be the first to admit voice acting in video games is very fucking integral to my enjoyment of characters and games as a whole. Personally, I cannot stand the British writing or voice acting of Dragon Quest and Xenoblade, and playing it in Japanese does not fix it. And so, the new voice cast. It's not that they're bad, it's just the Japanese cast have come back to reprise their roles, and recently I watched the P3 movies, and so those voices are good and familiar and fresh in my mind. So no disrespect to the new actors, but I find the Japanese ones a little bit more endearing, so I picked them. I've been playing the game alongside friends who are playing the game in English, so I have seen segments in both languages, and my personal preference is just Japanese. So, alongside the new game's voice cast, there is Also, a new female vocalist for the new Reload tracks. I have mixed feelings on these new tracks now. I think topping any of P3's music is a fucking tall order, and I don't think I'm alone in feeling that. Now, when it comes to voice acting and music, this is all personal preference and taste. So me saying XYZ thing is good, that's because of my taste and my opinion. Feel free to have your own opinions, and as a matter of fact, if I see any of you losers saying my opinions word for word, I will bully you for not being a free thinker. Anyways, so back to my point. So Reload's music has high highs and in my opinion low lows. I'm not saying that I think it's bad, I just feel like some samples that they use are a bit too similar to basic MIDI tracks. Like, some instruments in Iwatodai Dorm just feel like MIDI drums and trumpets, and it takes me back to playing the version 1.0 of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Although there are some tracks that don't gel with my taste, others like the remasters of Unavoidable Battle and the new Nighttime song goes incredibly hard, and I can see a lot of this music becoming oversaturated within the YouTuber video essays, as personifies beneath the mask in its OSTs. So, to summarize, in regards to a lot of Reload's voice work, it's mixed feelings, but nothing more than petty wants than anything. This section of the video is pretty spoiler heavy, so be warned. I'm about to discuss the first 2 full moon bosses and the new C's armor designs. So if you are not up to around the start of June within Persona 3 Reload, this is now the point where I suggest you leave a like, a little comment saying that I'm a pretentious dumbass, share your friends how dumb I am for not liking or liking XYZ thing, and going back to reloading. Okay, so that's your warning. It's been pretty fair and long. Okay, so the first full moon boss. Firstly, deep breath while running alongside the train tracks with the full moon in the background is fucking peak fiction. And then the cutscene before the boss, and then the boss, the BJ girl, I thought genuinely, I thought the fight was really fun. The way that you get 30 minutes and the timer ticks down, and how C's react to the fight once it's over, I think it was all done very tastefully and nostalgically. Honestly, a 10 out of 10 for me. And that's just because it nailed the pacing and tone perfectly. It took the original and improved it by 10, which is what a remake like this should aim to do. And so the second full moon boss, I got some pretty funny dialogue between Makoto and Yukari by continuously going into the bathroom because I'm a widow scaredy cat and I'm afraid of ghosts. But from that point onward, I felt like the cutscenes and set pieces were once again redone in a tasteful and amazing way within this new engine. Absolute peak fiction. Another note too is that the way that Fuka's ability has been redesigned with a new UI, I really like it. And there's this one budding thing that I really don't like that's rearing their ugly little head into my mind. Oh, it's the new C's combat armor. I don't like them. It's personal preference, I just don't like them. Don't hate me for it. I like Yukari's jumper, and I like using the Yasugami uniform on Makoto, and honestly, Akihiko's isn't that bad in full honesty, to be a bit serious, but why the fuck does Fuka have a poncho? She's not involved in combat, she's a fucking navigator. I mean, don't get me wrong, I get not wanting her to feel left out, but like, why? Regardless, I feel like Atlus is really applying their 18 years of experience and high budget to make Reload the penultimate version of Persona 3's male protagonist route. In conclusion, a lot can be said with the first 24 hours of Persona 3 Reload, but the main thing I feel is fun. Combat is enjoyable and engaging, dungeon exploration is fun and doesn't feel like a drag. One complaint many have of Tartarus. Social links feel like they have a new wave of life due to their new portraits and voice acting. And that's not to mention the text messages you get from them are a whole new wave of hilarity. Fucking Kazushi continues to reply to the same email, so all of his messages start with a bunch of REs. It's really charming. And that's what I feel about Reload. Its starting segments fill me with glee. I just worry that the honeymoon phase will end and things I credit the game for, like its handling of combat and baton passing, will end. And something will change about the combat for the worse going forward. Other than that, I'm optimistic about Persona 3 Reload and how it carries Persona 3's legacy going forward. It's not like noobs to the franchise are gonna pick the PS2 version or worse, the PSP version on modern platforms that still 1 year later have audio bugs they promised to fix. Unless Reload the fix is the fix for the audio bugs, but if you ask me, Reload also has an audio bug. You gotta set the voices to Japanese to fix it.